Hello, everyone. Welcome to Teach You Tuesday. My name is Brittany Bly. I'm the founder of Pop Shop America. You can find us online at popshopamerica.com. Today, we are going to make the cutest little accessory. We are going to make DIY clay beads. We're going to use polymer clay, which is also known as oven-baked clay. And then this is so much fun and so versatile because you can use the clay beads to make them into necklaces, keychains, all kinds of different items. This is a very stylish adult craft, but all of the supplies that we're using are really safe, really easy to work with. So this is a very family type of craft as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you are lucky enough to win one of these boxes, then these are the supplies that are included inside, which are some instructions, lots of different colors of oven-baked clay. Now, something to know about oven-baked clay is you'll see a lot of different brands. Not all brands are created alike. So this is a higher end brand, and I really do recommend a nice quality oven-baked clay. It's just gonna look more professional when it's finished, and it's gonna be a little bit easier to work with. So lots of different colors in here. We also have some leather, which is really great for making necklaces or keychains. We have some glue. This is E6000, and this is the best kind of glue to use for this project. And we have all kinds of little jewelry. So I have earring backings, brooch backings, keychain rings, and even little barrette pins. The last supply that you're gonna need for this workshop are just some little skewers. These are wooden skewers right here, but metal ones that you have lying around the house are perfect too. Just think anything in your kitchen, something that you use for kebabs, or anything very long and lean is going to serve that purpose. There can definitely be some variation there. So I'm gonna put all these away and set this to the side. And I'm gonna show you some of my bulk supplies that I'm working with here. So to start this workshop, the first thing that we want to do is just pick one color of clay, any color of clay, and just set it in front of you. You definitely want to start with an open, clear space. You definitely need to work on a very flat, smooth surface. The texture of the surface is something that can transfer to the clay itself. So something that's nice and smooth and clear of debris. So if you're doing this at home, you may want to consider actually cleaning the surface first before you get started. So I have a very small amount of pink polymer clay right here, oven-baked clay. I need a small amount. This is like a dime size amount of clay. And we're going to make our first shape of bead. Super simple. Best way to get started, make a sphere. So all we have to do for this one is just take the clay in one hand, use your other hand, and we're just gonna start working it into a ball. You can also press this against your table. Use your table as one surface, your hand as the other, and you're just gonna keep rolling and rolling until you have a perfect sphere. Now, this will take a little bit longer than what you think because a goal of this step is to actually smooth out the surface from any wrinkles, from any basically lines, from the clay kind of folding in on itself. So this will take a little bit longer than what you're expecting. And we can just use a table or our hands and just keep rolling into a ball. All right, mine is looking pretty good. So let me show you the next step, which now I have this perfect little sphere. I'm gonna take one of my wooden skewers and I'm just really carefully and gently going to use the sharp edge to make the hole through the center to make it into a bead. Now, one thing you're gonna notice is that I'm actually twisting and turning the skewer. I'm not just poking it straight through. If you try to stab the skewer straight through the clay, it's going to alter the shape of the clay. it's going to change it from a sphere to something that's a little bit more potato-like, kind of weird, kind of misshapen. So that twisting motion that I'm using is such a great way to reduce the pressure on the clay and keep that perfect sphere shape. So I'm still twisting, and then I just pull it right back out, set my skewer to the side. Now I've got a little hole. I've made this clay sphere into a bead. Now, every now and again, and this is just something that happens, you know, along the way, is you might notice that there's like a kind of a puckering edge around the hole that you just poked with the skewer. It's totally okay. Just take your hand and really gently just smooth out any changes that have happened. Press the clay back into that perfect sphere. So just feel free to kind of get on in there. Use your hands to press it around, make it back into a sphere. So here we go. I had one puckered edge, and I just kind of pressed it with my hands, and now it's looking a lot better. Of course, your beads do have to be perfect, and we can make all kinds of cool shapes that don't fit into like sphere, square, you know, anything like that. So once this bead is done, I'm just going to set it to the side. We'll move on to our next. The next shape is going to be a square. And I'm going to grab some of this really cool blue clay right here. Doing the same thing, just taking a dime size amount. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fingertips to make flat surfaces, and I'm going to make a cube. So this square bead or cube bead is going to have 6 sides. So I'm just going to press along each side. I'm flattening with my fingers and rolling it into a sphere. And I'm going to keep pressing until a square or a cube is formed. Now this clay, this is really interesting. The clay that I'm working with now is just a little bit harder. So it's a little bit harder to work with than that pink clay that I made the sphere with. So you will see variations like that. There can definitely be a little bit of hardness or softness variation. It's totally okay. Once you start to get your hands into the clay, just the warmth from your hands and just the natural kind of moisture of your hands is going to help soften that clay. So even if it starts out a little bit hard, just keep working with it and it'll soften over time. So I just keep pressing this around, using my fingertips to make flat sides, and I'm pretty much done. Now this isn't perfect. This does have a little bit of handmade kind of look to it, which is totally okay. If I wanted to make this perfect, I could use a clay tool like this. You could use a butter knife if you're working at home, or any kind of flat surface like a X-Acto knife to even out each edge and make it perfect. But we don't really need that for what I'm working on. So this handmade square bead is just perfect. So poking the hole and making this square piece of clay into a bead is just slightly different because now we actually need to be a little bit more careful with the way that we're poking the hole. So not only do we need it centered on our starting side, we need to make sure that the skewer is moving through the clay perfectly evenly, perfectly centered, so that it comes out the other side also in the center. So again, I'm using that twisting motion. Now I'm going a little bit slower because I want to be extra careful. Great, and we got it at just perfect. So on this side, we have it right in the dead center. And I just keep twisting, keep twirling that skewer, pull it right back out. We have the same type of puckering that we had with our first bead. So just like the first bead, I'm just going to go over it a few more times with my fingers and just kind of press those sides back into a perfect shape. You can even take your skewer, run it through again, this time in reverse. So whichever side the skewer came out of, this time you're going to use that as your starting point. And that's a great way just to make that hole nice and even, super professional, look really great. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And now I have an awesome looking square bead, and I'm just going to set it right next to my circle bead. So we are going to now make 2 more bead shapes. The next one is going to go along the same lines as these first 2. The last one is going to be really cool, so stay tuned for that. So let's grab one more color. This time I'm picking a really cool neon yellow. And now I'm going to make a cylinder bead, which are so cute for necklaces, so cute for keychains. So with this one, I'm doing a similar motion to how I made the sphere bead. This time, I'm rolling it in my hands back and forth, more like a snake, not around in a circle, but just back and forth. Once I get a nice kind of snake cylinder shape, I press the ends with my fingertips, just like the second bead, just like that square bead. So we're actually using both of those first 2 techniques, but we're using them together to make a cylinder. So we just go along our long end, roll it back and forth, then squeeze the ends. Just like the first 2 beads, I'm going to keep doing this motion for even longer than it seems like it should take. And that's because I do have some lines and some kind of imperfections from where the clay folded over into itself, and that's smooth out. I want a perfectly smooth surface, so I'm just going to keep working it back and forth until those work themselves out. So I'm using my fingertips to make at sides on the end, and then using the palms of my hand to roll it back and forth to make the smooth sides of the cylinder. All right, and it's looking really good. Everything is smoothed out. So now what I want to do, and I've got this really cute little marshmallow shape right here. So now what I want to do is I want to make it kind of even throughout. So one thing that you might notice with a cylinder bead like this is it might have a tendency to kind of like lean to one side or like lean to another, or like the top could be like slightly bigger than the bottom. It's totally okay. That's something that you can just use your hands to even it out a little bit. And now we are ready to poke the hole, turn this clay shape into a bead. So I want my bead to basically run through those flat sides so that the curved edges, the sides of the cylinder, are going to basically be the sides of the bead. So I need to use the same tactic that I did with that square bead, where it's not just important to center the skewer on the first side where you're poking the skewer through, but you also want to make sure that where it comes out is also perfectly centered. So still twisting the skewer, running it back and forth. We got it. It's right in the center, looking good. It does have just a touch of puckering, just like those first 2. No problem at all, because we will smooth those out. So here's my hole. Now I'm just going to use my hands to just even this out and just remove any of that puckering that took place from me turning this clay shape into a clay bead. Perfect. So now I just set this to the side. I've got 3 shapes so far here. I actually am going to move these to the front so you can take a look. They're so tiny and cute and colorful. Of course, you can make these in any color of the rainbow, or you can combine colors to make your own basically color, which is what we're going to do now. I'm going to show you how to marble clay and make really cool swirls of color that all blend together and kind of twist and twirl into something that's very cute. So we're going to marble clay and make that into a bead, and this will be our last bead. So what we want to do for this is we want 3 different colors. I highly recommend that white or a strong neutral is one of those colors. So I've got some white right here. And I've got some really cool light green right here. And let's use this turquoise that I haven't used yet right here. I have amounts of all of these colors. They don't have to be perfectly even, but it's a really nice way to get started. And then once you understand this technique a little bit better, you can always make variations from there. So to make a marbled clay bead, first I'm going to make snakes of each individual color. So now I'm using my hand and I'm using the table, and I'm going to make basically just like we're, kids, just like we're having fun with clay. I'm going to run my hand back and forth to make shapes that are long and lean, make a clay snake. You could actually do this with up to 5 colors, but I think 3 is a really great way to get started. So now I have my snake. It's about, I'm going to say maybe somewhere between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 inch thickness. And I also want to try to make my snake pretty even throughout. So I don't want one side of it to be thicker than the other. I want the whole thing to be pretty even. Then we just repeat that with our next color. Just making a snake. It doesn't have to be the exact same length or the exact same thickness as our first snake, but we want to get it kind of close. So I'm looking at my first snake as a guide, and I want the second one to be just about the same length and just about the same thickness. And that's looking pretty good. Here is my second snake in this really cool lime green that I'm kind of obsessed with. And then we'll do the same one last time with this blue that we've got right here. And this blue is just a little bit harder, just like I mentioned before, that there can be a little bit of variation in how hard or soft the clay is. It's totally okay. Hopefully you notice that once I get this going, it softens right up. With polymer clay or oven baked clay, what we never want to do is we never want to add water to that clay to try to soften it. Your hands will soften it just with the warmth. Now with air dry clay, which is a very different type of clay, with that we could actually add a little bit of water if we need to soften it up. So here's my third snake. Now I have them all next to each other. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually kind of make them in one kind of mega snake. So I'm even going to kind of roll it just to get that going. Now I've got basically one snake that's 3 colors. Now that you have this, let's give it a twist. Let's turn our snakes into this like gorgeous kind of taffy looking creation. Just twirl it and twirl it. It doesn't matter how many times you twirl it. You can kind of just use your intuition as your guide to how much you twirl this. Once we have it nice and twirled and it looks like candy taffy, we fold the ends together, press it together on both ends, and now let's roll it into a snake one more time. So we're just using our hands, we're just rolling it into a snake to kind of even it out. So now we're going to have something kind of like this. Let's fold it over one more time, end to end. It's getting thicker and thicker, shorter and shorter. It's totally fine. And now let's roll it out. And now we can basically roll it into any shape we want. You could use a tool. This is a clay roller to flatten it and to punch a shape. If you don't have a clay roller, this actually, I don't recommend buying one of these, just like off topic. This is like the silliest, I mean, it's a cylinder. This is the silliest waste of money that you will see at a craft supply store. You can use a pint glass. You could use a cylinder vase. You can use something like this, which is just a little dowel rod, to get the same effect. There's really no point in having this. I'm only going to show you, because I have it in front of me, that basically you can just flatten that clay to cut or punch a shape. This is a great way to see that marbling effect. Now, once we lift it up, now check it out, how all those colors have swirled together. If it's not swirled enough, that's totally okay. You can just roll it into a ball. And let me show you another really cool thing you can do now that you've marbled this clay. Is you can take a little pinch off of it, and we can make this marbled clay into a bead. So now we've got another dime size amount. It's already pre-marbled. And let's just roll it back into a sphere. So we're rolling it back into a sphere, so we're using the same tactic that we used for our first bead in the very beginning. Just rolling it in between my hands. You could also use the table in front of you as your surface. And now check that out. You've got these really gorgeous swirls of colors. And let's use our skewer to poke our hole, twisting the skewer through. And now that we've made a few different shapes of clay beads, let's talk about how we're going to use these clay beads to make objects. So the first thing to do before we make a finished object is we're going to want to bake this clay and get it ready to be used. To bake clay, any instructions that you read online are going to tell you to bake it at 300 degrees. I do not agree with that statement at all. I have seen oven-baked clay burn at 300 degrees so many times. And when you put this much care and effort into your creations only to see it burn, it's really sad. I highly recommend baking it at 275, which is great because it gives your oven just a little bit of variation. You know, some ovens run a little bit hot, some are a little bit cooler. This is something that you can use in a regular oven. This is something that you can bake in a toaster oven as well. I highly recommend 270 to 75 degrees for about 15 minutes. Once those 15 minutes are up, pull that clay out, and what you want to look for are a couple of different qualities. So first of all, your clay, hopefully you notice right here, that all of this clay is just ever so slightly shiny. Wet clay is always just a touch shiny. Baked clay is going to be nice and matte. Another thing is that this wet clay is really tacky to the touch. It kind of sticks to your hands when you're working with it. Baked clay is not going to be tacky at all. It's going to be completely dry, and it's not going to like have that kind of wet feeling when you touch it. So you know your clay is done when it looks matte, it doesn't look shiny, and when you touch it, it doesn't feel tacky. So to make this keychain, let's just take a small length of this leather cord that we have right here. You don't need much, maybe 4 inches or so, and just cut it off right here. We're going to knot one end. That way our beads have a place to hold on the leather itself. So we just tie it in a regular knot. Take those beads and just slip them through the leather cord. Of course, do this in any order. You can use any beads you like. there's definitely no right or wrong way to do this. I always like to add beads in sections of 3 because I think it's just very pleasant for the eye. And then once you're ready, take this keychain ring right here and push the end of the keychain ring through the leather cord. And now we're just going to tie a knot on the other end of this leather cord, which is going to tie the end of that keychain ring into place. So here we go. We have got a cute clay keychain, which is just one of the many items that you can make with these oven clay beads. In addition, we can make earrings, we can make pin backs. Basically, the sky is the limit. Anything that's beaded, anything that you can add to clay is going to be perfect for this. So we will see you for the next Teach You Tuesday. We hope you have the best day and crafting.